Ready to level up your leadership? This is the Growth Project. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Project. On today's episode, we are exploring neurodiversity and how it might show itself and impact the workplace and our role as leaders in harnessing it, recognizing it, and supporting those who might be neurodivergent. In this episode today, we're going to explore basically what neurodiversity is. We're going to talk about the challenges and disadvantages of neurodivergent people in the workplace. And we're also going to explore the responsibility of leaders and the importance and benefits of having an awareness and a deeper understanding of neurodiversity. We're going to then look at some simple considerations and strategies that we can use as leaders in supporting neurodivergent team members. So imagine this. Imagine you're leading a team. You're giving clear instructions on everyday tasks, but it seems like some folks just aren't getting it. Maybe production is being slowed down. Maybe things are getting really frustrating, and you might be thinking, are they doing this on purpose? Is it just stubbornness? Is it rudeness? Or is it a bad attitude problem? Sound familiar? Look, I think a lot of people would say that they can relate to feeling frustrated with things like this. But what we are going to do today is flip the coin and look at it through a different lens, just like we did, I guess, with the conflict episode. We're going to reframe it and rethink how we approach certain situations where neurodivergence might be a factor. What if it's not about being difficult? What if some of your team members see and process things differently due to neurodivergence? And what if you understanding this could be the key, I guess, to unlocking the full potential of your team or certain individuals and easing some of these daily frustrations? And what if you've been missing some cues and signs all along? And what if there were some simple strategies that you could use to support neurodivergent employees and enhance your team and your business? Well, this is what we're going to talk about. We're diving into this. We're going to explore how we can understand each other better and how we can create a workplace or an environment where everyone gets their chance to shine and to put their best foot forward and to thrive. The first thing, though, is if you're not familiar with what neurodiversity is, whilst it was initially coined, I guess, to describe individuals with autism, neurodiversity now describes anyone with a different brain process. As the research continues and enhances on the understanding of the brain, the number of people that is believed to be neurodiverse continues to increase. In fact, some studies have identified that nearly 30% of the entire population is neurodiverse, such as individuals with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or commonly known as ADHD as the acronym, dyslexia, and as well as people on the autism spectrum, among others as well. But I guess those would be the most common. The important thing to note is that, and let's make this really, really crystal clear, that there is no direct association between a person's intelligence and neurodivergence. Being neurodivergent is not considered a flaw. It is not a deficit. It is merely a difference from the norm, or what we would consider to be the norm. It means, though, that everyone's brain works differently in its own unique way. some people might think, might learn or interact differently than what we might consider usual, and that's perfectly okay. This is not about being better or worse. It's about being different and embracing those differences to understand and support each other better than perhaps we do. So, like I said, the common ones that we're going to look at today would be ADHD. This is where individuals might have difficulties holding their attention and managing thoughts and behaviors and emotions. We're going to look at autism, sometimes called spectrum disorder or ASD, autism spectrum disorder. This includes a broad range of conditions, though, that may include challenges with socializing, social skills. It might cause repetitive behaviors, or it might even trigger speech difficulties, and others will unpack it a bit more shortly. And then dyslexia was the other. This can include misreading things, miswriting, misspeaking certain things, as well as confusion with letters or misunderstanding of the way that words are organized or pronunciation, or maybe trouble following directions and things like this. So if even just from those brief descriptions, you're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, look, I do see those kinds of things happening or manifesting in the workplace from time to time. And keeping in mind, studies are showing that it is believed that nearly a third of the population is neurodivergent. So that would not be out of the ordinary by any stretch. So, and what it also means is that there's probably a lot of people out there who are undiagnosed, who aren't aware or not consciously aware that they're neurodivergent, and that's perfectly okay as well. So let's unpack it a little bit, though. Let's have a look at ADHD, and let's have a look at how you might notice signs of ADHD in individuals. So some common ones would be that they might become easily distracted by stimuli around them, sounds, noises, smells, other activities happening. There might be difficulty paying attention or focusing, like when they're reading or listening to other people. They might frequently daydream or zone out, even in the middle of a conversation. They might quickly get bored and start seeking out other ways to stimulate themselves, right? So this is where you might see a lot of fidgeting and things like this, or becoming restless and wriggling in the seat and all those sorts of things. You might notice frequently interrupting other people or talking over them, because there can be an overwhelming sense of getting their thoughts out quickly while they've still got hold of them. You might notice them acting recklessly or spontaneously without any regard for any consequences, risk taking and things like that. You might notice they might have trouble behaving in socially appropriate ways. You might notice them being easily flustered or stressed out. You might also notice that they're hypersensitive to criticism. And like I said before, I touched on sitting still and having trouble with sitting still and focusing attention, and a lot of fidgeting. So you can imagine, though, that if you put yourself in that position with some of those difficulties, how functioning in a workplace could be really challenging in some cases, particularly where maybe someone's used to working with their hands and doing physical work, and all of a sudden maybe they're sitting in a training session for an entire day or multiple days in a row. That would present significant challenges for that person to get through their day. And we can recognize that, and we're going to talk about some simple ways we can support that as well. But it's also important to point out that for those who do live with ADHD, there are some advantages that employers can leverage and the individuals can leverage as well. So one of them would be that if the information is interesting to them, they can achieve a state of hyper-focus for long periods of time and extreme levels of persistence. They can be capable of extremely creative thinking, high energy levels. They tend to really enjoy working with other people and those kinds of interactions, and they can often feel a very strong sense of fairness and justice. So you could easily see the advantages that these people could leverage off in succeeding in their work and anything that they're putting they're sort of putting their efforts to. And of course, those benefits flow on to the employer or their leaders, right? And we can use that knowledge to help them succeed and give them things to do that are interesting to them, or find ways to make their tasks interesting. So let's move on and to autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. I'll refer to it as ASD. So what you might notice is individuals having difficulty regulating their emotions and keeping check. And we've spoken in other episodes about some of those challenges and how we can respond to those kinds of tricky situations. Those are prime times to utilize those tactics. You might notice that the person is having trouble keeping up a conversation. They can often feel awkward in those situations as well, and not know what to say and when to say it. They might have trouble interpreting facial expressions or body language or other social cues. Sometimes sarcasm and hypotheticals might get missed by individuals with ASD. You might notice fidgeting. You might notice them having trouble maintaining eye contact during a conversation. They might miss punchlines for jokes, and like I said, sarcasm. They might take sarcasm quite literally as well. So they might miss the sarcastic element entirely, which can obviously lead to significant misunderstandings of situations or social. And this is where the social cues being missed comes into it. You might notice the person often bumping into things or being generally clumsy. They might display repetitive behaviors. They might appear agitated or distressed when you might have a plan for how the day's going to go, for example, or we're doing these particular jobs today, or I need you to do these particular tasks. And then if that plan is suddenly changed, that can really throw the person into a spin, and it can be difficult for them to get rubber on the road again after that. They can have difficulty concentrating where there's a lack of interest. They can have very rigid and inflexible thinking and opinions on things. They can be subject to some sensory overload. So there could be really strong reactions to noise or high levels of noise when they're trying to concentrate or do something. Could be just general background noise that's disturbing large crowds and things like that. Strong smells and touch, so surfaces. So it could be rough surfaces, smooth surfaces, textures and things like that. Fabrics. It can really trigger some tricky responses in their body. And you might even notice poor quality handwriting. That can be a symptom as well. So again, some significant challenges for people living with ASD to overcome on a daily basis. And that can also provide plenty of tricky situations for others around them in the workplace as well. However, just like we focused on the advantages for ADHD, there are some advantages as well that we should put a spotlight on for people living with ASD. They can often feel compelled to follow rules or procedure. They often will thrive on structure, have a really keen eye for detail. They might have really strong pattern recognition skills. as well. That seems to come naturally for a lot of people with ASD, and they can often retain information very well, especially when they're really engaged and interested. So we're seeing some common themes between ADHD and ASD in terms of the advantages. And again, you can see the opportunities as an employer to really engage people with ASD, particularly where we have a workplace that's heavily reliant on following systems and process and protocol, and there are strict safety rules and quality rules and things like that. So we can really see some strong results from these people in those areas. Let's look at dyslexia. So people with dyslexia, typically, as you'll know, would have difficulties with reading, especially if it's really dense text or if it's really unfamiliar. This can be extra evident in those situations. It might include slow reading, misreading words entirely, or just a difficulty in understanding written instructions. You could understand how that might be a problem in a lot of workplaces. They might struggle with spelling things accurately. They might take longer to write emails or reports or send text messages or write things down. They might have trouble organizing their thoughts coherently on paper or digitally as well, in emails or in a document and things like that. Some individuals with dyslexia might have trouble with time management, organizing their tasks for the day or to keep something on track with a schedule or a deadline. They might struggle with tasks that require attention to detail, such as data entry or proofreading or checking things against a checklist, reading measurements and things like that. There might be short-term and working memory difficulties. They might show by forgetting names or struggling to remember specific details or instructions. So obviously some big challenges to overcome in a lot of workplaces for people living with dyslexia. But again, let's have a look at the strengths of individuals with dyslexia. So many people affected do excel at problem solving and thinking outside of the box. They might see patterns and solutions that other people might not see. Many individuals also with dyslexia are highly creative and can really excel in finding unique and innovative solutions to problems. They often develop strong listening and oral verbal communication skills because they've had to rely on these skills, rely more on spoken language to get through work situations and social settings and anything that involves those skills that they struggle with. They've had to evolve the opposite skills. So the challenges faced by people with dyslexia can really make them more empathetic and understanding of other people's difficulties and differences because they're acutely aware of their own. Overcoming the challenges associated with dyslexia, though, often can really build high levels of resilience and determination and a very strong work ethic, which are very valuable attributes in any workplace. I don't care which industry you're in. So when it comes to leaders, and the reason I'm putting this out there on this forum is that as leaders, we really need to have an awareness of some of these challenges that people face, because whether we're willing to acknowledge it or accept it or not, we are going to lead people who are neurodivergent. There's no doubt about it. Again, we're talking about the likelihood that nearly 1 in 3 people have some kind of neurodivergence that we're going to need to cater for. So there are some strategies that we can put in place, and it all involves scaffolding around people to support them and prop them up and allow them to overcome some of their challenges. So when I say scaffolding, I don't physically mean scaffolding like on a building site, although I guess metaphorically it is kind of the same thing. It's about helping people reach higher levels of that they wouldn't normally be able to reach. So that's why the term is scaffolding. So in the context of workplace support and workplace learning, scaffolding refers to a variety of instructional techniques that we could use to move students or employees or team members progressively towards a stronger understanding and ultimately a greater independence in the learning process whilst they're doing their work. The term scaffolding itself offers, like I said, the metaphor of a scaffold, which allows a builder to reach higher and go further than they could without it. In the workplace, especially when we're supporting neurodivergent individuals like autistic workers, for example, scaffolding means that we're providing a structured support to help employees understand and perform their roles better. This support is gradually reduced as employees, though, become more competent and confident in their roles, and you become more confident in their capabilities. So what scaffolding does is it helps them build self-confidence, and it enhances learning, it promotes independence, and it fosters a supportive environment and increases productivity. There's no doubt about that. In a workplace setting, scaffolding might involve providing clear step-by-step instructions, regular check-ins and feedback, hands-on training, and a supportive and inclusive environment. This structured support helps neurodivergent employees, like people with ASD or any neurodivergent employee, helps them to navigate their role successfully and I guess contribute to overall success of individuals and our teams. So how can we implement some scaffolding? There are lots of different ways we can do this, and I'll outline a few, and I'll point you to a resource that will provide lots of others as well. But one would be to provide a visual work schedule or a list of tasks outlining what needs to be done for the day, or it could be for tasks that we're going to repeat every day. It could be a standard checklist on what needs to be done. Something visual helps people who are neurodivergent. Visual is a great aid. It can help the individual learn to know what to expect. It can help them reduce anxiety that is related to the unpredictability. That's what causes a lot of the distress for people, or stress as well, for people who do live with neurodiversity. If we provide a visual schedule or a list of tasks, like I said, that can really help break that down. We could establish quiet areas where people or workers can take breaks away from a lot of sensory overload. It can help reduce overwhelm for people who deal with that, because like I said before, a lot of extra stimuli around them can be quite overwhelming. It can be a very simple thing to help. We should encourage all workers to be mindful of noise levels and respect the need for some quiet spaces for these people when they need it. We could schedule some regular check-ins with the person to provide some clear and constructive feedback using the techniques that we've spoken about in previous episodes, and to discuss any other supports or adjustments that might be needed. We should encourage open communication, allowing people to express any needs or concerns. And what was really valuable, I think, is to educate other people in the workplace about neurodiversity and some of the challenges that people face and the simple things we can do, like what we've just pointed out. Remember, though, it is essential to approach the concept or the topic of neurodiversity with sensitivity and discretion. It's very possible that individuals may be neurodivergent and might not be aware of it, or they might not wish to disclose it, and it's their right to not have that disclosed. So it's not appropriate to confront people directly or to speculate about someone's, neurological status. So instead, though, of directly confronting individuals about whether they're neurodivergent or not, let's just focus on observing the signs that there might be some diverse needs. And where it's appropriate, we can proactively put strategies and supports in place, like some of the ones that I described. We really need to focus on building that atmosphere where everyone feels valued and supported, and we can allow individuals to disclose any specific needs or challenges that they have, whether they volunteer that information up or whether we just notice it. But if they are going to volunteer it, they need to know that they can put that out there without fear of any stigma or discrimination or any issues like that. So, and that really comes down to the leader setting the example on how we talk about those kinds of challenges. So again, that starts with awareness. I think training in awareness and programs like that, or creating policies that promote diversity and equity and making sure that no one is excluded or no one is disadvantaged or victimized or anything like that. When it is clear, though, that there are some diverse needs, we should put some plans in place on how we can scaffold around that person to help them do their best work, right? So it could involve adjusting workloads, assistive technologies, like I said, visual aids, visual instructions, as opposed to lengthy texts, or any other accommodations, I guess, that address any specific needs. The ultimate goal, though, is to ensure that everyone, regardless of their neurodiversity status, can work effectively and comfortably. That's where we're going to get the best results for them and for our team. So by fostering a supportive and inclusive workplace culture and providing appropriate accommodations proactively, we can help every single individual succeed and contribute their unique perspectives and strengths to the mix. Remember, though, the objective is not to label. We don't want to label people as neurodivergent. We want to just simply understand and support any diverse needs that we can see, and the capabilities of all individuals within the workplace can then be harnessed. So again, it's the role of the leader that shapes how our teams see neurodivergence, perhaps how we can anticipate it or notice signs that there might be some diverse needs. It's on us as leaders to set the culture around it. And it's up to us as leaders to enhance our knowledge on how to support neurodivergent workers and implement some inclusive practices. So my call to action to you is to share this information, share this podcast, share any other resources that you know of to other people in leadership roles to start shifting attitudes and aligning attitudes in the right direction. There are so many amazing resources out there. One that I'll put in the show notes is a website called the Neurodiversity Hub. And on this website, there are loads and loads of information and resources for employers on, in particular, autism awareness, also ADHD, dyslexia, but there's resources on strengths-based job matching, tips and advice on how to scaffold, how to communicate more effectively with people who are neurodivergent, tons and loads of strategies and fantastic resources, downloadable, free, to assist you in building your strategies to scaffold around neurodivergence. So to recap, again, it's our shared responsibility, especially as leaders, to create spaces for work where every single individual, every unique mind feels valued and supported. Imagine a world where your neurodivergent child or grandchild steps into a workplace that recognizes and celebrates and embraces their unique abilities and their perspectives. As leaders, we can pave the way for a future where every mind is appreciated, where our differences are our strengths, and where every individual has the opportunity to thrive and contribute to success. There you have it, folks. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of The Growth Project. I'm really enjoying the interaction, so please keep the messages and emails coming through. Keep an eye out for our upcoming Frontline Leader Mindset workshops at entertrain.com.au. They're in Sydney and Melbourne. And of course, you can reach out to request a private customized workshop for your team. Again, that's entertrain.com.au. That's entertrain.com.au. What would really help us send our leadership insights far and wide is 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or even just share the show with your network, family, and friends. Until the next episode, look after yourself and look after your teams.